Welcome to a Kia David Extra. Trevor and I decided to do this quick react video to something we saw on Twitter. So Robert Kennedy, who recently just came out of the race, stopped his campaign and decided to join forces with Trump, was on Tucker Carlson's, X TV series or show. And he was interviewed by him and said something really profound that both of us really found really interesting. For me, something that stood out to me is the things that you're about to hear sounded a lot like what's said in the Nemenhah records about, I won't spoil it for you, but it just sounded like something that Zion would do in the last days. And for Trevor, it was a completely different experience. If you want to say that, Trevor, for the audience.
Yeah, I mean, first off, just so that people don't sandbag in the comments, we know that he didn't drop out of the race. He dropped off of 10 of the Republican states, the swing states, right? So he dropped out because he wants Trump to win. You know, he's clearly said that the Democratic Party is no longer his party. They've jumped the shark. They're no longer the party of his dad and his uncle, JFK. And they talk about it a little bit in the interview. But the thing to me that I was like, dude, we got to get this out is I've been watching Tucker Carlson for years and years. Huge fan of Tucker Carlson. And I've never watched a Tucker Carlson video where I felt the spirit. And here I am watching this, I'm just like doing my morning tasks, watching this video, and I just get lit up by the spirit. It's so powerful. It's so beautiful what he says here that we're like, dude, we gotta share this. We gotta get this out. So regardless of where you are politically, right? Whether you're left, whether you're right. I mean, this guy, Bobby, is neither now, right? And he talks about the environment. And for those who don't know, for the last 30 years, this guy's been fighting harder for the environment than anyone that I know of. I mean, he single-handedly sued and then cleaned up the Hudson River. It's one of the cleanest rivers in the Northeast right now. And he's just been a campaign for the environment. And, a lot of Republicans get this bad rap for being like, you guys don't care about the environment. And that's not true. We love the earth. We love Mother Nature. And he articulates this so incredibly well, and he ties the gospel into it. So it's beautiful. We're going to let it roll. We may pause a couple times, make some comments, but yeah, dude, let's let this baby roll.
I'm gonna try my best not to pause it because it's just really profound. Here we go.
So what is this realignment that you mentioned at the outset? Because this does feel like it's bigger than just this November.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a series of these realignments throughout American history, and there's history books that are written about the realignments. I think there's about 5 of them, and one of those is clearly happening now because you see on so many issues, you've had an inversion. The Democratic Party has become the party of the elites. It used to be the party of the poor and the working class. In fact, there was a study that came out just recently that I saw that showed that 70%, that the people who voted for Biden own 70% of the wealth in this country. The people who voted for Trump own 30%. And so
I believe that.
Right. So you're seeing this realignment happen where the elites, where Wall Street or the big tech, big pharma, the big banking houses are all now Democratic. And that the working class, middle class, the cops, the firefighters, Sean O'Brien, head of the Teamsters Union, spoke.
Good guy.
A great guy, great guy. Really love him. But he spoke at the Democratic convention. The Republican convention rather than Democratic convention. So you're seeing this big alignment, and even on environmental issues. It's so weird to me because the Democrats have become subsumed in this carbon orthodox. And you and I have talked about this, that the only issue is carbon. And what that's done is it's forced them to do something that you should never do if you're an environmentalist, which is to commoditize and quantify everything. So everything is measured by its carbon footprint, how many tons of carbon it produces. And, you're basically, you're putting everything in that kind of box of being able to quantify it and explain its value by numerically. And the reason that we protect the environment is just the opposite of that. The reason that we protect the environment is because there's a spiritual connection. There's there's a love that we have. I got into the environment because I wanted, this connection to the fishes and the birds and the wildlife and the whales. And the Purple Mountain's majesty, and that, I understood that the way, God talks to human beings through many vectors, through each other, through organized religion, through the great prophets, through the wise people, the great books of those religions, but nowhere with the kind of detail and texture and grace and joy as through creation. And when we destroy nature, we diminish our capacity to sense the divine, understand who God is and what our own potential is and duties are as human beings. And that,
I hope what you just said, by the way, is chopped up and put all over every social media platform in the world. When we destroy nature, we degrade our own ability to experience the divine.
Yeah. And that it's not about quantifying stuff. That's what the devil does. He quantifies everything, right? And that is, what he wants us doing. Put a number on it. And the reason we're preserving these things is because we love our children, and it's because we get nature enriches us economically and spiritually and culturally and historically. It connects us to those 10,000 generations of human beings that were here before there were laptops. And it connects us to the most important spiritual lesson of every
this is amazing.
All of the organized religions that we know of today. The central revelation of every one of those religions always occurred in the wilderness. Moses had to go into the wilderness to listen to hear God's voice and see the burning bush. He had to go to the wilderness of Mount Sinai to get the commandments. Muhammad who was a city boy from Mecca, had to go to the wilderness of Mount Hera on a camping trip with his kids and wrestle the angel Gabriel in the middle of the night and have the first stanzas of the surahs of the Quran squeezed from him. Buddha had to go into the wilderness to sit under and wander for years and then sit under the Bodhigaya tree.
And Joseph Smith had to go into the sacred grove to see God the Father and Jesus Christ
to get his first revelation of nirvana. And Christ had to spend 40 days in the wilderness to discover his divinity for the first time. And his mentor was John the Baptist, who lived in a cave in the Jordan Valley and ate honey of wild bees and locusts. And then all of Christ's parables come from nature. I'm the vine, you are the branches, the mustard seed, the little swallows, the scattering the seeds on the fallow ground, because that is where we sense the divine. God talks to us through the fishes, the birds, the leaves. They're all, words from our Creator. And that is why we preserve nature. Yes. It's not because of it's not because the quantity of carbon. And by the way,
I feel what you said so deeply, I can hardly even express it. And thank you for saying that.
And by the way, we, the best.
Tucker Carlson, feeling the spirit right there. Right? Dude, what a cool breakdown. Like you mentioned this to me earlier. You're like, I don't hear any politicians talking like this. Do you? And we had a little convo about this, and it's like, this is such a breath of fresh air, man. Like, this guy's such a stud. Let's keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. It's profound.
The best thing that you can do for climate is to restore the soils. The soils are the solution to everything. The soil will absorb all that carbon. And it'll absorb the water. It'll stop the flooding. It'll give us healthy food. And that's what our national policy has to be. It has to be restoring the soil. And that is, everybody, listen, if you want to unite America, then talk about these things. Talk about the fishes, the bird, the wildlife.
I just got to plug in here. We're not too much of a fan of our current governor, but we did notice that he's in efforts to try and get more Utah land back from federal government lands, BLM.
Yeah. Obama gave all of Bears Ears, I think is what it's called, National Park. Like if you go and Google the state of Utah and look at total government land ownership in Utah, it's like 70% of the state or more owned by the federal.
It's just it's ridiculous. So,
and just talk about ending mountaintop removal mining. Talk about ending the mountain cutting. Talk about getting rid of, the Democrats are putting these offshore wind farms that are exterminating the whales.
I know.
Most of us got into this because of the whales. And they're about to extinguish the right whales, the last ones on Earth, because with these monstrosities that are costing us 3 times the amount. We don't need them. It costs 33 cents a kilowatt hour when you can get onshore wind for 10 cents a kilowatt hour. And who's making the money? Goldman Sachs, BlackRock, foreign governments. And the other thing that they're funding, hundreds of billions of dollars. This is what climate has turned into. Is these climate capture pipelines that are wreaking havoc with the agricultural lands across the Midwest, stealing people's property rights with, eminent domain. And who's making the money? BlackRock. And it's a useless technology that does not work. It's just all a boondoggle. And that's what's become the environmental movement in this country. And if you depart from that orthodoxy, you're expelled from it. If you want to make Americans fight each other, talk about carbon. If you want to bring Americans together, talk about habitat protection.
Yeah, nature.
And
it's a little weird. You literally spent your life with river keepers as an environmentalist, environmental lawyer in the environmental movement. That's your life work product. Or have you been expelled from the movement?
Pretty much, yeah. The weird thing is, I think of you as a radical environmentalist.
Well, I definitely am.
Yeah. You are.
I haven't showered inside in 10 years. Yeah. No, I feel it so strongly. Yes.
Also, you love nature. You're against these big projects that are destroying it. And, you talk about toxics. And the environmental movement no longer talks about toxics anymore. They don't care about it. They don't care that we're mass poisoning our children. It's so weird to me. And I saw you, for 40 years, I've been fighting to get against endocrine disruptors. Endocrine disruptors are a class of chemicals that they alter us hormonally, and they change they can change sexual conduct, they can change sexual development, they can affect fertility, and we've already lost 50% of our sperm count. We're having girls in this country that are achieving puberty on average between 10 and 13 years old. That's 6 years less younger than they were, 80 years ago. We have the lowest puberty levels on any continent in the world here because we're just bombarding our children with endocrine disruptors. And they're chemicals like PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyl, atrazine, which can turn male frogs into females and produce fertile eggs. That's how potent they are as an endocrine disruptor. And it's in 63% of our water supply. PCBs, which I've been fighting since the day I became an environmental lawyer and getting them out of the Hudson. So, and for 40 years, I've been trying to get Republicans to talk about it. I talk with Roger Ailes all the time, who both of us know, who would let me occasionally onto Fox News to talk about it. But there was so much hostility from the Republican Party because it was like you're attacking corporate profit taking, and that these are chemicals, they're molecules. Who cares? They can't hurt you. And there was just, and then you do this incredible show on endocrine disruptors. And I'm like, oh my God, Tucker Carlson has just done the best show that's ever been done, showing, what's happening with endocrine disruptors, how they're just destroying us. And the Democrats went after you and the environmental movement. And I'm like, what? This is what we've been trying to get for 40 years, the Republicans to care about these issues. And they said, oh, he's saying that chemicals turn people gay and he's anti-gay and all of this stuff. And that wasn't where you said it all. And that's not what anybody said. And what we're saying is we're destroying our children. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, and God's creation, which is not ours to destroy. Your description of why we protect nature and its role in our lives and what happens when you're cut off from nature and animals, being part of nature, is the best I've ever heard, ever.
Oh, thank you.
I mean it. And when that, when it becomes a matter of quantifying things for profit, then that kind of corrupts the whole.
Yeah, it's almost like RFK ended up saying something Satan didn't want him to say, because that was so powerful. Powerful. I've never heard of endocrine. Am I saying that right? Endocrine
disruptors.
What is that? I've never heard of that.
A lot of them are in the plastics, right? There's they're chemicals. Atrazine is a chemical, like it's in all of our water systems. And the endocrine system is, it's entire system, like nervous system in your body. And they're now starting to make all of these links to these chemicals, these, basically all this stuff that's in our food and our water supply and our soils. And it's changing us, right? And there's a lot of people that are out there, and this is very, very controversial, and I don't know if this is true, but there's a lot of people saying, hey, this is why there's a lot of these transgender issues going on right now, because atrazine has proven that, like he mentioned there, these frogs that are in water, they're actually changing the sex of the frogs, and they're able to produce eggs. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I love this message that is coming up right now. We had Fabrizio on yesterday with the podcast that's going to be airing,
waking up,
talking about health, talking about what is in our food. He's in England, and the European Union and the UK do such a better job protecting their citizens against all of these different chemicals and food dyes and all of this stuff. Like, they're still not doing enough. But like, what's the matter, America? Like, what is going on? And we're just letting these huge corporations with processed foods and, all of these chemicals and hormones and GMOs, all for financial gain, all for the, just this evil little plan. And I don't even know if they know it's a plan that's like destroying us. But just driving over here, I was listening to someone else who was on Tucker Carlson talking about the obesity rates in America. And that, 70% of adults are obese or overweight. 70%. 80 years ago, it was like in the teens. 1 in 32 children now are being diagnosed as autistic. 1 in 32. They're using the same test. They've been using them for 20 years. 20 years ago, it was like 1 in 1,500 or some crazy stat like that. So we're poisoning our kids. We're poisoning ourselves. And it just seems like there's some evil going on. And if it's not evil, it's financially evil, right? And they're creating these GMOs and all these products. And, you go on the back of your food labels and you see all the stuff that's in these things. And it's just absolutely mind-blowing. So it warms my heart to hear somebody like Bobby Kennedy coming out and saying, make America healthy again, and I just thought that was such a beautiful way that he co-opted Trump's MAGA, regardless of where you feel about Trump, this guy should make you feel better, right? And, he's got some incredible takes, some amazing balances. I mean, he's the king of free speech. And that's one thing I love about Tucker Carlson and, Elon Musk and these guys. Like, they're literally saving the world with X and free speech, and, I just hope and pray that our country has a little more time. And, you know, I hope with him aligning himself with Trump, there's enough that can pull some of these, you know, good-hearted Democrats over. And, you know, whether you like Trump or not, the other solution is not the solution for America. And, you know,
when he was saying the reason why we got into this, like, and talking about the whales, you remember in the 90s?
Yeah.
Free Willy?
Yeah.
Everybody was celebrating with that kid and literally putting their arm up when the whale finally gets free. Oh, yeah. And jumps over. And it's totally changed now. The fact that to hear him saying we're deleting the very reason why for pretty much all of America, or a large part of it, was probably Democrat back in the 90s.
Oh, yeah. Well, Democrats have been environmentalists, you know, forever. They've shamed Republicans. You know, I've always felt bad being like, no, I love the earth, you know, but I liked how he pointed out, and very astutely, the agency. And, you know, he's like, he said something like, you know, Satan's the one that is forcing carbon credits.
Yeah.
Wasn't that interesting?
Well, and what really got to me is hearing him talk like about all the different prophets or leaders, religious figures. And I had to just plug in Joseph Smith in there. But it's like, if he can see that, like, what if all of this religious experience that we're in was all true? Like, maybe, yeah, there's some things that are incorrect or not recorded properly, but what if there are people that were inspired in India? What if there were people?
There are. I mean, you've read Bhagavad Gita, right?
But I think I grew up as a Latter-day Saint, just dismissing anything that didn't fit within my Latter-day Saint worldview, and I've come to realization that the Lord's kingdom is a building without walls. That all of Christianity, for instance, has truth, and it's not just like bits and pieces and we have all the truth. It's like the Lord loves them too enough to try and lead them as well, that they do have their own prophets, you know, and that he is trying to speak to all of us. And will we listen? If he says to, you know, do it to the least of these our brethren, you know, when he talks about giving to the poor and visiting those in prison, you know, he wants us to expand our view as well, and to not dismiss or think, oh, well, that person is out of God's kingdom because he didn't accept the Book of Mormon. And I think that's the crux, or the stumbling block that we got to watch out for.
Yeah, there's this tendency because of the restoration, right? This, you know, we are the one and only true church, right? There's truth in that statement, but it puts us in like this slippery slope where we can become like those that are going on the Ramyamptom, right?
Exactly.
I'm up on the Ramyamptom, and we're just being like, thank you, God, that we're the one and only true church, and that all of these other people are so fallen, and, you know, so grateful for that. And, you know, it's something that I worked with my little kids on in when they were little, watching testimony meeting, right? And, you know, I had to go over this saying, and it's very innocent, and I'm not shaming anyone for saying it because I did it when I was a little kid. But when you hear little kids go up to bear their testimony, 99% of them are going to say this thing: I'd like to bear my testimony, and do you know what they say next?
Yeah. Well, I know the church is true.
And I know this church is true, right? And it's a true statement, but it deserves a deeper conversation with our kids. And, you know, there's truth everywhere. I loved Hinckley's, you know, we're going to take this portion of truth and this portion of truth and this portion of it and circumscribe it in, you know, into one great truth and one great whole. And, you know, I thought it was so beautiful, this teaching of Bobby Kennedy. I had no idea that he had that type of religious depth, and
he knows his scriptures, or he knows something.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Trevor, for taking some time and, having me do this reaction. I'd love to do more reaction videos of stuff we see on Twitter, of a political nature, of a relationship nature, or religious, whatever it is. I thought this was really great. And, thank you so much. And, for our viewers, everybody, this is a little extra. It's not one of our long form videos that we normally like to do, or that you guys like to normally watch. But our hope is that you see some value in this, and also that you would like to, continue the discussion in the comments. Trevor's always in there answering. It's not usually me. I try to poke around, but I know I'm probably out of my wheelhouse going in there. And so, looking forward to seeing you next time when we do another Kia David Extra like this, and make America healthy again. We will see you again. Thanks.